Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about what it takes to put that lawnmower away or do a fall service on it. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome back to the channel. My name is Eric, and I thought today what we would go through is what should I be doing as far as getting my lawnmower ready to be put away. And there are a few things that you have to look at first before we get to that point. And one is your lawnmower a dual purpose? Do you take the deck off from it and put a snowblower on it or push blade on it, where you're using it year round versus just in the summer? Because that makes a difference on how we're going to go about a service. Now, if you're using it year round, personally I recommend you do it once a year, and I think you should do it in the fall. That way you've got clean, light fluid for oil that will work through its system. So what are we going to need today to be able to do what we need to do on our lawnmower? Let's start with tools. You're going to need spark plug wrench, the right size. Needle nose pliers, and that's to crimp the fuel line. And I've got a fuel shutoff here that, if need be, if the system doesn't have it, put one in it. I'm telling you right now, it's going to save you a lot of heartache. And you're going to need an oil wrench to change the oil filter. And they come in all different flavors. There's this style, and of course you can get the Harbor Freight kit of where you get like 5-6 different filter wrenches that go on. For me, I don't think these work as well. The one we probably use the most in the shop is this one, because you can grip right onto it. And one of the things that I see way too often is people over tightening the oil filter when they put it on. Because all you gotta do is take your finger and take some of the oil out of the old oil filter and just wipe it around the rubber gasket that's on the new filter. Thread it in hand tight and then give it a quarter of a turn, half of a turn with the wrench, max. Because you're defeating the purpose. If you smash that rubber O-ring, basically is what it is, then it's not able to do its job. Where I don't want you to be able to turn it back off with your fingers, but it should be hand tight and then give it a quarter to a half a turn, max. That's all you need. Alright, so the steps that we're going to do in taking care of your lawnmower is, the first thing I like to do is I like to let it start and warm up. And why is that? Well, it's because I think that oil, if it's warm, it's going to run out faster, so you can do an oil change. And once it's warmed up and you bring it inside, because I recommend you letting it start outside and then bringing it in. I start with the oil. And the reason I start with draining the oil is that's going to take the longest. So the first thing I do is I get a pan underneath the mower and open the oil drain and pull the dipstick out to allow it to get more air down through, so it's not holding it back. And while it's draining, I have time to change the plugs, and that's going to be if it's a single or if it's going to be a twin. You got to have 2 plugs. And I can change the fuel filter, the spark plugs, check the air breather, blow it out if necessary, replace it, do some other maintenance while it's draining, because it's going to take the most to drain it. And once it stops draining, then I'll take the oil filter off itself. And I like to put a rag underneath this so you're not getting it all over the machine. So we've put the new oil back in, put the new oil filter on, we've got the new fuel filter, we've got an inline shutoff in place, and if we don't, that's why we're going to use the needle nose vice grips to crimp the fuel line between the fuel tank or the fuel pump and the carburetor. And then we're going to put a shutoff in there. Now, most of your stuff is coming in with the shutoffs. The other thing you're going to need is a putty knife. And why a putty knife? Well, and you're also going to need an air compressor and just, something that you can blow air through it, to clean off your decks and stuff. It's time to get it cleaned up. The easiest thing to do is to actually pull the pins and drop your deck, slide your deck right out. Take your deck right off for the winter. Because you're going to take a putty knife and you're going to scrape all that inside down. Because you want it right down to bare metal, so it's not sitting there either on top of the deck or below the deck where it can rot out the deck. And then I had mentioned in another video, I recommend fluid film. And it takes and it lubricates all the steel and it sticks to it, and it keeps it from being able to be open to the air that can start oxidizing and having rust develop. The big thing that I see here at the shop is the mowers outlasting the mower decks. That's usually the first thing to go, is the cheaper mowers have got real thin stamped decks, and they just 4 or 5 years and they're rusting out. We do a lot of patching here, of welding patches in to secure it. The other thing I want to talk about is making sure you have the right parts. And what do I mean by that? If you bought the unit brand new, good chances are the spark plugs you take out, the air filter that you take out, those are all going to be correct. But what I've seen is people buy used, and for whatever reason, people think that a spark plug is a spark plug. As long as I can thread it in the hole, that'll work, and it's not correct. You have to go by what the manufacturer suggests, and they all have different heat ranges of the spark and everything. Some are hotter, some aren't as hotter. But the manufacturer has found plug X works best on their Briggs engine, on their Tecumseh engine, on whatever engine you're working on. And another thing I want to add is that a lot of us don't talk about, but you guys out there that own your own mowers and stuff, some of the better ones are not air cooled, they're liquid cooled. So you have to take the added step of making sure that your mower is set up for at least 30 below zero. And why 30? Because I've seen it hit 30 below. But on the most winters, 15, 20 below. But if you've got it set for 30, 35 below, so that you're not cracking the blocks and everything else and it's not freezing, that's good. So how do we know if we're getting the correct parts if we didn't buy the mower brand new? Well, a lot of times with your newer mowers, if you flip up the hood, it'll tell you, the belt sizes, the air filters, spark plugs, oil filter, and so on. But if it doesn't have all that, then you're left with, if it's an engine part, you can't go by the model number of the machine you're working on. And why is that? Because let's say we're working on a Cub Cadet that's got a 22 horse, 24 horse Briggs & Stratton. Now if you take the model number of that Cub Cadet and you run it, it'll bring everything else, it'll bring everything up but the engine. It won't, sometimes it'll give you a model number of the engine, but you have to take, if you're working on a Briggs engine, if you look on the valve covers, it usually is stamped right into it what the model type is. And then you can run a search on that based on that model and type to make sure that you're using the correct spark plugs, fuel filters, and so on. And the other thing to consider if you're buying used is I call them Frankenstein machines. That's machines that come in where somebody has swapped the hoods on it, they've swapped the engines on it, they've swapped the decks, and they've just made it work. When you're looking at buying a used mower, be careful, because you may go by what the cowl, the hood says for parts, right? And it may not be the right hood that goes on that machine, and not one part will fit that machine. Even worse is if the hood's good, but you have a different deck. Now that's going to change everything, because now you can't go by belt sizes. You can't go by anything because they made it into a Frankenstein. And the same goes for engines. It may say that it's a 50-inch with a 24 Briggs in it, but you may end up with the 12-horse Briggs in the frickin' thing just because you don't know. So when you're out there looking and trying to buy a used mower, keep those things in mind. The last thing you want is a Frankenstein machine. When we have models here that come in, as far as people wanting to sell their old mowers, and if they're late model, decent shape, if they're a Frankenstein machine, I don't want it. I want everything kind of like the old classic cars. You want matching numbers, right? You want everything that came with that unit be the same that it was from the factory. I hope that makes sense. It's just something buyer beware, because there's a lot of people out there just throwing them together. So hopefully this is going to help you get a better jump start on your fall service. Now, if you're just going to use it during the summer months and it's just a single use unit, then you've got the option. You can either do it in the fall or the spring. Depends upon you and when you have more time. But at the bare minimum, you want to blow the deck off and you want to clean the underside of the deck to make sure that there's no debris up in there, and give a coating to the deck. Now, if you're going to do a fall service, then that's when I recommend you check belts, pulleys, any wear and tear on that unit that, maybe the idler spring let loose or what have you. That's why I say a lot of times it's easier if the deck is right off from it. And especially if you're going to put a snowblower on it. But if you're going to use it year-round, I recommend you do it in the fall if you have a snowblower unit. If you don't and you're putting it away, you can go either spring or fall. The other thing I'll add is when you put that lawnmower away, if you're putting it on a concrete surface in a garage, you're okay. But if you've got an outbuilding that has got ground or clay, what have you, the last thing you want to do is pull it into there and leave it. And the reasoning behind that is I see it way too often. We've got tires that are weather checked. We've got decks that are right down into the mud. Tires that are flat. If I'm not saying it's not okay to park it up there. What I'm telling you is grab a couple 1-inch boards, that are 4, 5, 6 inches wide, and drive your mower on the boards and keep it suspended away from the dirt, because the dirt will rust your deck terrible, and it will start weather checking the tires from sitting in the dirt. So hopefully that's helped you on what you need to have and what you need to do for a service. And then also let me add, if you have a lot of the zero turns now, and even the other ones, you're seeing a lot of hydrostatic transmissions. And some are sealed units where only a dealership can pull the plug and refill it, because you end up damaging the plug when you try to get it out. So your dealer gets a plug kit, so when he pulls that out, tops it off, he can put a new plug in it. You know, I'm not sure if homeowners have access to that, but maybe your local dealer could get that for you. A lot of the better ones have actually got, you know, where you can fill and check the fluids on it. And I recommend that every couple of years you drain the system on those better ones and put new hydrostatic transmission oil in it. You know, it helps with the wear and tear and everything. Every year change the filter. Every couple of years change all the fluids. If you have one of your hydrostatic pumps go bad and they're both feeding off from the same reservoir, good chances are it's already started to destroy your other one. Where I've seen a lot of landscape folks that run them hard all summer long and have one go bad, the pieces of shrapnel and everything else that are in it have gone through and now have compromised the other side. So a lot of those guys, what they do is they flush the complete system and put on 2 brand new motors and go. All right, so let's kind of work you through the system on how you should be doing stuff. And number one, this is your oil drain. And some come with the added hose with the kit when you buy it new, so that you can extend it out away from the frame. When you open that up to drain, after you've let it run a little bit to warm it up, pop this and just set that right across there. Because that tells me that until I put that back in, I have not added oil to it, and don't try to run it. A lot of times the easiest way to work on these things is just simply taking the light switch and unplugging it, and these cowls will come right off. While it's draining, we want to concentrate on taking the air filter, taking it out, looking at it, trying to decide whether it needs a new air filter or just to have it blown out. And we were talking about model and type on a Briggs engine. Here's the valve cover. It's an aluminum cover, and they stamp it right in. So I know by looking at the model and the type, if I run that number through Google, it'll bring it up, or the John Deere website when it comes to this unit. You have your spark plugs on both sides. Pop it out, put a new plug in. And like we were talking about with the fuel filter, there is not a fuel, or the fuel shutoff. There is not a fuel shutoff on this system. So I am going to try to put one between either here or here. And that way I can shut the fuel off. Now, I know people are going to ask me about the battery. What do I do with the battery? Should I bring it inside? Should I leave it outside? Put it inside with a maintainer, outside with a maintainer? You know, it's no rhyme or reason, but some batteries seem to be good. Some just last 6 months. That's the way they're coming through. As I was talking to you about your decks, see, this is starting to peel. And the last thing you want is that deck to start oxidizing. So you want to get it cleaned up. You can paint it, or fluid film works good on it. So after you're all said and done, one of the things that you're going to want to, I know what's going to be asked is, why do I have to change the plugs? The plug should be good. Well, it's in our shop, we charge $4 a plug. It's worth $8 to me not to have any worries, because I've got fresh oil filter, air breather replaced or blown out. You know, I've done everything to the system to have it where I should not have any troubles throughout the summer when I go back to use it. But once you add the oil back in, and you got to start checking it with a dipstick, then it's fine to put the dipstick back on. The other thing is fuel. I like to let my riding lawnmowers get down pretty low towards the end of the season because I don't want a lot of fuel sitting in that tank all season, all winter. And the reasoning behind that is because the fuel is not lasting that long. It's breaking down. So if you when you get to where you want to put the lawnmower and you let it run, shut the fuel off with the fuel shut off and let the engine die. That means it keeps the gas between the shut off and the carburetor is mostly gone. It's not going to be all gone. There's still going to be some traces, but for the most part, it's gone. And then in the spring of the year, when I go to use it, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add fresh fuel. And I use ethanol free. But as I've shown in another video that you may want to watch, is you're not always getting ethanol free. Because if the guy ahead of you got just regular unleaded 87, you're going to get so much of 87 before you start getting the non-ethanol. So unless you're watching the guy ahead of you and you know that he's getting premium fuel, the non-ethanol, good chances are you're going to end up with some ethanol fuel in the tank. So by putting fresh fuel in the spring, when you get ready to use it, hopefully you don't have a lot of fuel already sitting there and you can dilute it up. It's not going to be as big a problem with the 4-stroke as it is the 2-stroke, but they don't like running on ethanol or water and condensation that ethanol can draw. So I hope that's helped. So before I let you go, the last thing I want to say is oil. Is there a certain brand that I should get? And that's totally up to you. Will Walmart's 10W30 work? Absolutely. I mean, it meets the grade. The only thing that I would recommend, whether you're working on a engine that doesn't ask for synthetic or an engine that does ask for it, just use synthetic in everything. And I mean, even the 2-strokes. I use synthetic 50-to-1 mixture for my chainsaws and stuff. But if I'm mixing it up, I'm going to go with a synthetic blend versus the not. And it's just, I feel that it makes things last a lot longer. It's got better viscosity, and for what few cents more you're going to spend, I think it's worth it. Alright, so let's wrap this thing up. If you have any questions, comments, what have you, put them in the comment section. I do read all of them and I do respond to all of them. And we have a great crew here within the channel of a lot of people that know what they're talking about. They're in the business, they've been in the business for a while, and I trust them to also help me make sure that you get the correct answer that you're asking for. So on that note, you guys have a great day and stay tuned. We're going to try doing, repair shop videos for you guys, for you DIYs or the guys that are just looking at getting into the small engine repair business and giving you the leg up to help you out. All right. See you later.